Leigh Evans here at the wtba again, and welcome to Tai Chi for Health, the Modern or the Western View, Volume 2. It's been over a year since the last one. It's been a very busy year. So, without further ado, where we move on to Tai Chi for Health, the Western View, is to look at mobility. In the first one we looked at structure. So we've got our structural development and we understood what's happening with the whole body and linking the whole body together. So this gives us a continuity now to move on to movement. So in the West, what we have is a principle of functional mobility, which is what's used by physiotherapists, by osteopaths and all sorts of different types of therapists to keep us free from pain, keep us free from illness, to rehabilitate us from illness, and to bring general good health. Also to link the body together for strength in athletes. Say runners have injured their quads and they need to link the pelvis back to the quads or the psoas back to the quads because there's an injury there. It's functional mobility principles that they use to bring that body connectivity back together. So, as we did in the first volume, we looked at stability and structure. That's what the functional mobility is going to do. Alan the dog enters the video. That's what functional mobility is going to do, is to stabilize the body for freedom of movement or good movement for everyday life. So, if I can ask my lovely assistant, Eli Montague, who you may know from some of the videos he's made, to come in and just to stand in his preparation for the Tai Chi form. So the main areas of functional mobility that we look at to link the body together and to, as I said, increase stability in the body, which we did in the structure of Tai Chi, are the neck, the shoulders, the hips, and the spine, and the legs, obviously. So, where we went with the structure was just to bring them together, to link them together, to keep them strong, to encapsulate or cavitate the joints of the spine by having a good upright structure, by adhering to the classics of Tai Chi. Functional mobility works very, very well, and the whole of your Tai Chi form is a progressive functional mobility, providing you adhere to the classics. The Tai Chi form is wonderfully designed. The most modern thinking on rehabilitative exercise has the same progression in the rehabilitative exercise, whether you be an athlete or whether you be an elderly lady who's fractured their femur or their hip. There's progression to the functional mobility. Stabilize the body, stabilize the structure, increase mobility so we can carry on with our everyday lives or excel in our given sport or our given so where we started off was with the neck and to the top of the head relation so that we get a good upright spine. Then we went to the shoulders where we understood the classics of keeping the shoulder in play or keeping a fist width space in the armpit. As I mentioned in the first one, this implies the rotator cuff, or what Master Earl used to call the scapular spring. It does work as a spring when you're employing the rotator cuff. Then we've got the spine and the pelvis and the legs. So, where we go with our Tai Chi form is if Eli could do his first movement. So here we've got a raising and lifting of the rotator cuff and a slight undulation of the neck. So we're starting to work on stabilization and rotation of the neck and stabilization and rotation of the shoulders. All movement comes from dantian. So here we're understanding the relation now between the hips, the psoas, the transverse abdominis, the diaphragm, the thoracic spine, to feed the shoulders, to feed the neck. So the next part of our stabilization, you don't have to keep on doing your first move now, thank you very much mate. The next part that we're looking at is the hips. So as we said in the first volume, by tucking the pelvis under, we're using the psoas to hold the pelvis slightly forward so we can work like a child's swing, Earl used to say. I've heard of it being a hovering disc in Pilates, they talk about a bucket of water, which you don't want to spill the bucket of water, or you want to spill a little bit of it backwards to hold a good pelvic structure. So, but what Earl meant, my belief by what Earl meant by a child's swing is a child's swing may sit like a cradle, whether there's a child in it or not, but it's free to move in any direction where there's an incoming force. So whenever the body's moving in a functional fashion, as Eli did his, if you can do your first move again, as Eli does his first movement, you can see there's a slight rotation of his pelvis, and then his pelvis is going to rotate back down, and then it's going to tilt slightly as he sits back into the end of the movement. So there, with the occurring forces through the body, the pelvis is actually moving in a rotational, flexing way. So, if Eli does his first movement again, we can also see now that because the hips are flexing and the arms are moving, there's an exchange of weight which is employing his quads and his ITB in his legs. And that is the classic say that we feed force to the ground. So he's got good flexation of his quads, and his ITBs are coming into play, or his intertibial band are coming into play and are flexing as he's doing the movement to allow weight exchange to the body. His spine is also rotating very, very slightly, which is the start of the rotational movement of the spine. So in Tai Chi, we get the backbone, is what it's called, as opposed to having an S-shaped spine. So we try and get to the backbone, which, as I said in volume 1, gives us a very, very erect, very upright, very strong spine, which still has its elasticity and freedom to move. So Eli's going to take the first step now into single ward off. I don't mind if you go from the start, mate, or whether you just take your first step straight into it. So if he takes a step really slow, you can see there now he's utilising dorsiflexion and plantar flexion of the foot. And then as the foot comes down, he's going to bring his body weight forwards, and then we'll be sitting into the posture. So again, this is using the hip flexor, which is the psoas. Psoas is my buzzword at the moment, because everything comes from dantian, and to stabilise and to link the lower and upper body, it is basically the psoas which is doing the most of the movement. So you can see there that as he stepped, because his body's nice and loose, he's having a calonetic effect. So Tai Chi not only is a functional mobility, it's also a calonetic exercise, because it's using the smaller muscle groups, which I talked about in the first volume, to do the job that they're meant to do. So it's to give direction and to allow for flexion and extension of joints, to allow the body weight to move through as he steps forwards. So by stimulating those muscles and utilising those muscles and isolating those muscles, he's strengthening them to hopefully keep us mobile throughout our lives. So giving us the key to eternal youthfulness, which I mentioned in the first one from the classics. I don't believe is going to make us live forever, but is going to make us live a very wholesome life, a very complete life right towards the end of our lives, which to me is the key of eternal youthfulness. So if Eli wouldn't mind going from single ward off and turning and getting ready to go into double ward off. We can see here now that he's had a slight rotation of the shoulder, so the shoulder needs to stabilise and to be able to lift, to flex the joint, to use the joint, and to have a rotation in its movement. And you can also see that his neck, when he went from, if you don't mind doing it again, Eli, going from single ward off to turn to double ward off, you can see that his neck rotated very, very slightly more than it did when he did his first movement. There was a little undulation to the body. And if you can go into double ward off, so again, he had the opposite dorsiflexion, plantar flexion of the right foot. Now he has an outward rotation of his right arm, so that he's using the rotational muscles of his right shoulder to stabilise and to keep the right shoulder mobile. And he's got an internal rotation of his left arm. And this, as I said earlier, is concurrent with the modern ideas of functional mobility. Now if you go into Louis, if you don't mind me leg. There, he's got an outward rotation and an inward rotation, and now he comes back into lie, and he has an outward rotation and an inward rotation of the opposite limbs. And I believe this sticks in with the continuity of the principle of 6 balanced pairs, which, if you want to know about, then you can have a look at more of our Tai Chi form. So, the next part of functional mobility, as regards the Western view of functional mobility, is we start to work on one-legged postures which have stabilization from the opposite leg. So I know that they use ideas of the willow tree and the such like from Hatha Yoga in modern physiotherapy, and there's things from Rolfing, I believe it's called Rolfing, isn't it? Rolfing is that principle? And there's
I've heard of that, but
yeah.
in Australia that means vomiting, so I've always quite clicked with that Rolfing.
Okay. So, we use one-legged idea. I know from knee rehabilitation that I've done myself after destroying my knees with accidents. I used to have to squat, do a one-legged squat, but I could stabilize with the opposite leg just to give myself a little bit of structural integrity whilst I strengthened and increased the mobility of the knee that I'd injured. Then I could use a weight from above the knee to squat down into the knee, and then I had to take the weight behind the knee to destabilize the knee a bit further, and then I moved on to full pistol squats to rehabilitate the knee. So there was a progression with that. Now this progression is inherent in the Tai Chi form. So if Eli doesn't mind doing single wall off again. So there you can see he took a step, a one-legged step, where all of his weight was in the right leg, which he's standing on one leg to start with, and that's increasing his stability with his functional movement from a one-legged posture. But now he's gone into maybe a 70-30 and 80-20 sort of weight exchange. Weight exchange and single wall off? 70-30? Classically, yeah, cool. So, if Eli will just progress through his form now. So again, you can see there's a lack of weight in the right leg, and then the weight will transfer again. And then that weight's going to come back. So you can see now he's exchanging weight through the pelvis, back and forth through his legs for his functional mobility, and loading and unloading each limb. Not fully, but loading and unloading each limb as he goes, which, as I said, is concurrent with modern functional mobility principles. So hence now a lot of rehabilitative centres, especially from brain injuries, there's a massive amount of research being done by psychologists and neurophysiologists into slow movement at the moment, some of which I'll mention a bit later, and its benefits as relation to brain-body function, body sense, mindfulness, all of the latest buzzwords in exercise and in meditation and in psychology and physiology. So here you can see he's exchanging his body weight further and further between each leg, committing that body weight further and further down into each leg, which is concurrent with the progressive nature of functional mobility. And here now he's doing an external rotation and internal rotation of the pelvis whilst purely in a one-legged stance. So this is the benefits of one-legged standing that we've got from yoga now and from Tai Chi, and that they're using in functional mobility. So again, now he's gone back to this idea of transferring body weight through the body, loading and unloading each limb. This is very, very important principle for functional mobility, as I'll mention as we go further through this volume. So there we have a building up of power in the body, increasing the power in the body into a plyometric movement. So I'll mention more about plyometrics in a little bit. So again, here we're going to have another very empty step. So he's fully weighted on one side of the body. Now what's aiding the functional mobility now are different principles that I'm going to get to, such as proprioception, using the peripheral vision, non-focused vision. He's not looking at his hands, he's not looking at his arms, and stop if you don't mind. Now, stalk spreads its wings is identical to a lot of functional mobility principles that they give to people that have brain body damage, that have acute body damage from major trauma and the such like, because here he's almost fully weighted on one side of his body with an extension and a contraction of different sides of the body, but a stabilization principle from the front leg. So he's standing in one posture and he's having the brain-body link to go from being fully weighted in one leg and stabilizing and empty in the other side. Okay, so that's all increasing not just his mobility and stability, but his overall body strength and balance. Balance is very important in in any life really, not just modern life. But because we don't use our bodies very naturally, a lot of people have very poor coordination and balance. Functional mobility brings back coordination and balance. And he's also working on his inner ear or his middle ear when doing movements like stalk spreads its wings, like you see, like the flower pose from yoga and different things. But all the way through Tai Chi, there's one-legged stances, and these are increasing your balance by working on the middle ear and also the proprioception effects of knowing where the body is whilst doing different extended movements. Anecdotally, I'm an open water swimmer, and I've started getting really cold in my head when I've been swimming, and my middle ear has been affected. And although I'm used to swimming for miles and miles in the open water, I did a swim a couple of months back, and when I lifted my head up, the whole world had turned sideways because of the effect that the cold had had on my middle ear. So and I couldn't coordinate, I couldn't swim, I couldn't tell which way was up or down, and I was out in an estuary, which made it worse. But that's just to get across the importance of having this mind awareness of the middle ear, or having a good balance in effect of the middle ear, and in being able to increase their balance. So as I said earlier, it's being used a lot now in brain injury rehabilitation, whether that be from trauma or whether it be from internal bleeds, hemorrhages in the brain, or brain stem injuries and the such like, where people's coordination and balance have been affected. Tai Chi is being used a lot, and I know in Swansea, where we are at the moment, there's 2 Tai Chi classes that go on in the head injury unit, because Swansea is the National Centre for Head Injuries. So the head injury unit is teaching Tai Chi. So where we move on to next in functional mobility is where athletes tend to be. Because through our form now, because traditionally in China, in the West, we learn everything too quick. We want instant results, you know, we're a take-a-pill society, we watch TV, we've got goldfish minds, and that's not slating, you know, there's some wonderful progressions in knowledge and technology from the West. But we tend to want everything too quickly. We want instant results, and if there's not instant results, we lose our patience, we lose our attention. But where they are in China, and where it's learned traditionally, you will learn one move every 3 months. And that's to build up the strength or the bodybuilding of Tai Chi. And this becomes very apparent now when we start teaching people Tai Chi and they want to learn it too quick. And then all of a sudden we get them to go into a movement like you saw Eli turn beautifully and slowly and well structured and well rooted to the ground. And his awareness was very, very good as he turned into the end posture of single whip. And when we're teaching beginners, they may get to hear very well, like I teach a number of dancers and gymnasts and such, and they get to hear very well. And then when it comes to actually turning into the end posture of single whip, they're shaking like a leaf in the wind, because they haven't developed the structural integrity and the bodybuilding necessary to do that movement. Now that is developed through the way that we step, the way that we turn in the movements beforehand. So as I mentioned earlier, the Tai Chi form is wonderfully developed to build your strength and your functional mobility as it progresses through the form. So everything up to single whip, or the end posture of single whip, has given you the bodybuilding, the strengthening, the rooting to the ground, the stability, the functional mobility, the proprioception that's necessary to get you to be able to do the most difficult movement. And that progresses all the way through your Tai Chi form. If you don't mind going from the end posture single whip, holding up the heavens, high pattern horse, into duck lunge on water and up into the kick. Yeah. Yes. And keep going to this to the first slow kick if you don't mind.
Yes.
Yeah. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Oh, I had a question to ask you about that anyway, because I've done the form for so many years. Somebody asked me a question and I went.
What were they? Hold up the heavens.
Yeah.
Yes.
So all the way up to this part into the form now, Eli has been building the strength and the mobility necessary to do the more complex one-legged movements. As I said, the second part of Western functional mobility is identical to the second part of your Tai Chi form functional mobility and strength training, which allows you to do very complex, strong movements which are orientated in one-legged movement. So again, you can see there's expansion and contraction, rotational movement, there's full body coordination, there's complete weightedness in one leg, all very important for functional mobility and for building overall body strength. To there. So I'm not going to ask you to stop there, mate, that would be cruel. But you can see that was a very, very slow, very controlled, one-legged movement, which is seen as the pinnacle of the second part of functional mobility training in the West. The third part is, as I said a little bit earlier on, where we're going into the realms of rehabilitating athletes or progressing people into so, what's seen as the pinnacle of strength rehabilitation for athletes are very, very deep, very difficult movements to do.
It's the morning, I haven't warmed up yet.
Golden dog episode, I used to say. So yeah,
what you're going to make me do then.
He's been copying Alan, my dog.
Yes.
So in functional mobility training, there's things where they'll pick up a very, very small weight. Now, I'm not suggesting that you do this in your Tai Chi form. It's probably counterproductive to the way that we're doing things in Tai Chi form. So, if Eli wouldn't mind doing the first part of the bend backward sequence. So, as I said, in the highest level of functional mobility, you do very, very deep, difficult to do movements with body rotation. So, in functional mobility training in the West, now they'll get you to do something called an archer squat, or a very, very deep, difficult squat to do with thoracic rotation whilst holding a weight. So a deep archer squat will be here with a thoracic rotation whilst holding a weight, which, if you look at the movement that Eli just did and the movement that I just did, if you go into just the first part with the double fists, there he's got a deep one-legged squat with thoracic rotation. So, perfect. So exactly what is currently the most current ideas of strength training and functional mobility in the West, from the Western view of health, has been practiced in Tai Chi form, and I believe those sorts of movements were in the original forms of Chanting Feng. So from the 1300s. And I know the Indians have been practicing them for thousands of years, and the original Qigong texts, which are nigh on 1,000 years old, aren't they? Yeah. Have those sorts of deep movements with a rotational movement. So we're coming from the Western view of health, as far as we have progressed, you know, light years ahead, we're also coming back around and starting to embrace more ideas of ancient knowledge or traditional knowledge or martial knowledge as well, which as a martial artist kind of makes me a bit proud. But there you go. The next part of where we're going to look at movement as regards health for the modern view of the health of Tai Chi is as when I believe on the original one of the Wing Chun guys who was passing comments on the YouTube stuff pointed out, is it plyometrics? Well, yeah, spot on. Plyometrics tend to be repetitive movements of an explosive nature where you weight and unweight the body to increase power, speed and quickness. The quickness to react. So increasing your reaction training as well. So if you don't mind doing the first fudging movement. That's great having an assistant. Isn't that fully great, eh? Good. Thank you. So, as you can see from that movement, Eli built up power in his body. So it's like he went to start to run and then jumped on something, which I'm not even going to attempt it because I haven't got anything I can use. But you see in modern power and strength training for sprinters, power lifters and such like, they'll get a small table or a platform and they will build up the strength by doing an eccentric movement, which is an internal eccentric contraction. So the muscles are contracted in, and then all of a sudden, whoom, and they'll jump as quick and as hard as they can and land in one clean movement on top of that platform. And as I said, this is a plyometric sort of idea. And also you do things like plyometric push-ups, where you'll do a normal push-up and then on the way back up, wah, push yourself off the ground as explosively as you can. And again, this is having this plyometric effect. Martial artists have done it since martial arts have been invented. And I know there's some principles from the warrior systems of yoga that used to use plyometrics to increase body strength, to increase speed. But to me, it's quickness. That's the fast muscle fibre that I want, because I've always been quite strong. I've always been quite fast. But developing my quickness so I can link that speed and strength together with an overall body awareness is enhancing what I do as a martial artist, as a swimmer, as a barefoot runner, all the different funky things that I do in my life. Other people do other types of sports, you know. I know rugby players have started using a lot of plyometrics. In fact, I've been asked to go to a local rugby club to teach them martial arts so that they can learn plyometrics through the nature of martial arts, because they're limited in the plyometrics they're actually using. And this is the local Swansea Ospreys. They're a professional rugby team. Okay, so they're B team, but they're still preparing themselves for the international rugby arena. So they've asked me to go in as a martial artist to do plyometric work for them to increase. They are fast and they are quick. They are fast and they are strong. They want to improve their quickness. So I'm going in to teach them not just plyometrics, but reaction training and the such like as well from the martial arts. So all knowledge is coming together. We're really starting to gel knowledge through the health and through the sports arena of the martial art. I'm not a sports martial artist, but you know the boundaries are falling away now. So plyometrics, not just linking the whole body together, because as Eli done that movement, you saw that there was no part of his body that wasn't involved. He did an eccentric movement, an internal contraction, where he was drawing power into the body. Now this to me is gathering energy into the body. I'm not saying that we're not gathering internal energy, but as I progress through the training that I'm doing and as I progress through my Tai Chi. I want to talk to you, not to the camera, because you're you. As I progress through things, I'm starting to change my idea on what internal energy is, and I am actually talking to mobility scientists from the NHS, one of which has just become an instructor for the WTBA, so welcome Ben, and acupuncturists. We've got a number of acupuncturists and traditional Chinese healers in the system, and I'm also talking to them outside the system as well to differ my understanding or increase my understanding and hopefully develop our understanding of what Qi is and how it relates to the martial arts, or what internal energy is. There's also some very interesting NASA research that I'm starting to look at, which was passed on to me by an acupuncturist. But we'll go there. The next volume, we're going to look at the mind. We're going to look at internal energy in the final volume of Tai Chi for Health, the Western View. So, as you can see, there was nothing left out of Eli's body there. He did the complete jumping onto a platform principle of plyometrics, or the complete principle of doing explosive push-ups, plyometric push-ups. You do plyometrics when you're doing burpees, when you're doing jumping jacks, all these different sorts of things. You're looking at the idea of plyometrics. So he did an internal eccentric contraction to an external expansion in an explosive fashion, and we do these repeatedly at random, almost, well they're not random, but we do them in our Tai Chi form at different points. They're not at a regulated point. It's not like you do this amount of movements, then you do your plyometric or your Farging movement, then you do that amount of movements again. They're not placed at regular intervals. There's a difference in the amount of movements that you do in between explosive movements, and a different amount of explosive movements which are linked together in chains. So if you don't mind doing hit tiger left and right, if that's okay. Well, I'm loving having I'm going to keep my assistant do all my teaching practices. So you can see there, it was explosive in its nature, utilising the whole body, but it also had rotational movements with changes of direction. Now this increases the quickness again. So this is maybe your sprinter who is asked to sprint 20 metres, turn around suddenly and sprint off in a different direction. And I've also seen sprinters and rugby players sprinting for 20 metres and then having to run as quickly as they can through tyres. Putting each foot through a tyre, or running between sticks. So this is getting that quick change of direction that martial artists have been using since martial arts have begun. So this ancient knowledge has always been there of plyometrics and to increase the quickness of the body and the awareness of the body. Now, because of the stomping effect and because of the repetitive loading and unloading of the body, there's also something called osteogenesis which comes into play, which is very, very important for keeping us healthy and keeping us mobile all the way through our lives. Osteogenesis basically means combining form, or combining original form, that sort of thing, and it pertains to the bones. Now the classics of Tai Chi, if you're adhering to the classics, which you should be, we should never deviate from them, but we need to develop all of our arts. I'm sorry for traditionalists out there if you think, oh, I must never change anything. No, everything needs to develop. Tai Chi developed from the original systems of the Wudang of Chang Tam Fen. They developed over, what would it be, 600 years. There was a development from Chang Tam Fen to Yang Lu Chuan. Yang Lu Chuan is still considered by every stylist of Tai Chi, every family of Tai Chi that I've read the literature on, he is still considered to be the pinnacle of Tai Chi practitioners. He was known as Invincible Yang. Wasn't a very nice chap, I should imagine. He went around China looking for people to beat up, so he could prove how tough he was and to make his martial arts better. But he did produce what I consider to be to the pinnacle of Tai Chi forms. Where was I going? Oh yeah, bone density. So, in the Yang Lu Chuan form, and from Tai Chi research, and I believe, was it Fu Zong Wen they did a post-mortem on? And he had a third denser bone marrow structure and bone structure. I believe it was Fu Zong Wen anyway. And this has given what the classics say is the bones of the tiger. So as I was saying, we should develop our arts. We should use modern knowledge to bring our martial arts forwards. I'm not a fan of ring fighting, but a lot of ring fighters are really taking cutting-edge science and they're bringing them into traditional martial arts, but they're not changing the traditional martial art. They're developing the traditional martial art because they're taking what they can from the traditional martial art and utilising it with the very modern science. So whereas I'm maybe not a fan of ring fighting myself, I see the quality in what they're doing by developing the art. And I'm afraid we've got to develop our arts, otherwise they become stagnant and they get forgotten, they get left behind. So this is what, you know, we're endeavouring to do with our Tai Chi, with the system, which is what I believe Earl took a lot of flack for a lot of people who weren't as experienced as Earl and hadn't travelled and seen as much and done as much as he had, on why he was doing certain things with the art, and, you know, was he sticking to the classics and whatever else. It doesn't matter. Men of experience, and women, don't get me wrong, sorry, being a bit sexist there, men and women of great experience develop their arts. You know, there's some great female runners out there and swimmers at the moment that are doing wonderful things for running and swimming. So we've got to develop our arts and take them forwards, or they just can stagnate and get left behind. But yes, back to bone density. By repeatedly loading and unloading, we stimulate the osteogenesis, and we know that exercise causes denser bone structure. People with brittle bone disease, something called osteogenesis imperfecta, are encouraged to exercise. People with hip fractures, well, any type of fracture, are encouraged to exercise. Now, in the West, this is on discussion with clinical scientists. In the West, we tend to use walking as our loading and unloading exercise because people's running form is so bad. Running is better than walking for building denser bone structure if you have good running form. You must have good form and technique in everything you're doing. If you lose form and technique, then you damage your body. So again, this comes back to the classics now, where we're only learning one movement every 3 months. We don't want to learn things too quickly. You know, that's maybe a bit over the top. But we don't want to learn things too quickly because we need to have good form. I've been barefoot running for the last 8 years. I'm still working on my barefoot running technique and barefoot running form to get it correct. And I'm working with a number of different runners to do that. Anyway, I digress. So, where Eli was loading and unloading, whilst doing his internal contraction, to gather power, this is to me gathering energy into the body, to gather his power into his body, then he released that in a plyometric fashion which linked the whole body together, because the classics say the feet follow the hands. So the violence of his outward movement, or the explosiveness of his outward movement, caused his feet to move. And as his feet moved, one foot slapped into the ground. Yes, we all know this is stimulating kidney 1 or bubbling well to cause energy to run through the body, and I'm not debating that at all. To me, more importantly, what it's doing is it's causing a shock to go through a good structure in the body, and that shock is going straight through the body, through the leg, and strengthening the knee, the ankle, the ankle, the knee, the hip, and into the spine. Then it's coming up and it's doing exactly the same on the opposite foot by slamming the heel into the ground, and that shock is going straight through the ankle, the knee, into the hip, and straight up the spine, giving us the backbone. Now this osteogenesis, it's stimulating something called osteoblasts and osteoclasts in the body, which is giving us a denser bone structure. They basically come in, build new bone, and then take away what isn't needed. So that's why exercise gives you a denser bone structure. I'm a swimmer, and swimmers, professional swimmers, are advised to do some sort of impactive exercise, because swimming is one of the greatest exercises you can do as regards your cardiovascular system and your overall body health and strength, but it's a non-resistance exercise. There's no impact in it, so it actually doesn't strengthen your bones like other exercises do, or your ligaments and tendons. So professional swimmers are encouraged to run or do some plyometric work just to increase the density of their bones, to increase their overall strength, to increase their overall functional mobility, so that their swimming becomes better and they become healthier later on in life. Now then, Another anecdotal point which I've been asked by a lot of martial artists and a lot of people to go into, again, addresses this plyometric nature and the nature of osteogenesis. So stimulating the body's healing response to create more denser bone structure. Now in the West, when we've looked at the martial arts, we've looked at them in a very strange fashion, in a very Western way, you know. When the English first went to China, they said, what's that? When they saw people practicing their Chinese boxing, and the Chinese with a sense of humour turned and said, it's Kung Fu. So we've called all martial arts from China Kung Fu since then. Kung Fu means hard work. It's hard work. It is hard work. If it's not hard work, you're not doing it right, okay? Whether that's your Tai Chi or not. So when we looked at different principles of what people were doing in both China, Japan, everywhere that we went to look at the martial arts, we saw people breaking boards with their hands or hitting rocks with their hands and thought, oh, hitting things with your hands makes you tough. That's not the principle. That principle is purely there to cause osteogenesis in the arms, in the hands, the arms, and in the upper back. So primarily for the fighting arts, but also for health. When I was in Hantu in the north of Japan, I trained with 2 70-year-old men there, and they had a train axle off a train. And they were throwing it back and forth to each other and catching it on their forearms. And they were in their 70s. I couldn't do it, and I was in my mid-20s. It was just too heavy. And I didn't have the density of bone structure to catch a train axle with my arms. It's as simple as that. So when it comes to hitting, in China and in Japan, they start off by hitting bags of straw. Then they'll turn and they'll hit bags of maize. And then they'll start off with softwood. Then they'll start off with harder woods. And then they'll start sinking them into the ground so that there's some spring in them. And then they'll sink them further into the ground so there's less spring in them, so they're really hard. And then they move on to things like makawaras. Is that in view? So, if I go to my makawara now, which is a very hard wood with a tensile spring on the inside, so it's going to spring back at me, and it's attached to a brick wall. Okay, so I can hit that really hard, but that doesn't mean I'm really hard. It means over years of hitting things and slow development through what I'm hitting, it means I can hit very hard things without damaging myself. One, because my structure is good, so I'm allowing that shock into my body, and I'm not just totally hard when I'm hitting it, because that is a harder object than me. If I hit a hard object with the same integrity as the hard object, I will break, because I am softer than the hard object. So my structure is allowing for that shock to come into my body, but also the osteogenesis of hitting things that are getting harder and harder and harder as I go through life, as hopefully, anyway, I believe it has, we'll know when I die, and they cut me open, has given me denser bone structure to allow me to hit harder objects with correctness. Hitting hard things is a bit silly, but it is there, one, to develop your martial arts and develop your ability as a martial artist, and 2, to strengthen the body, and 3, to give us the bones of the tiger. As we get older, our bones, our whole body loses its ability to heal, or it's greatly reduced. So, if we, in early life and into midlife, strengthen our bodies, our muscles, our fast-twitch muscles, make them very elastic, get plenty of oxygen through to them, if we strengthen our ligaments and our tendons to hold our bones and our joints in place, and the other jobs that they do, and then strengthen our bones, as we come into the latter parts of our life, we have more of a cushion to fall back on. So we can keep ourselves more mobile through our functional mobility, our Tai Chi, and our strength training that we've done all the way through our lives will allow us hopefully to maintain a good quality of life towards the end of our lives. One of the greatest gifts of our Tai Chi, and one of the greatest gifts that nature has given us as far as I'm concerned, lots of things I say are as far as I'm concerned, is proprioception. And proprioception basically means one's own knowledge, or knowledge of one's self. You know, you can translate it lots of different ways, but that's its basic meaning. But basically it's the signal that the joints of our bodies give us to tell us the space that they're taking up or the position they are in. Now, Tai Chi is very, very good with to give us proprioceptive signals. One, because we use an expansion and contraction of the body. Two, because we're putting our body in positions that we don't normally put it in modern life, in ancient life when we used to go off and hunt and gather, or the latest research is we did a lot more gathering than hunting. We put our bodies in different elongated positions, going under bushes and climbing trees and such like. So we had more feedback from our joints of our bodies to tell us where our bodies were. Also, proprioception is telling us how much strength is being exerted by our bodies to do any specific job. Now this is why it's really bad to lock your feet up in shoes. So in our Tai Chi we do everything either in minimalist shoes. So traditionally we're in minimalist shoes which got no arch support, very little between your ground. You know, this is rubber. The original ones were cotton. I got some of them around here somewhere, but they wear out really quickly when you're training on concrete. So they're very minimalist shoes. There's nothing between stopping you getting signals from the ground back up through your body. Proprioception, as I said, it is the signal your body gives you. So when you're doing your Tai Chi, when you're doing any rehabilitative exercise and such like, they're now trying to discourage you from wearing things, wearing things like Nikes or cushioned soles and the such like, because they're giving you a false proprioception. They're not strengthening your ankles and your knees. If your body knows where your arms are and how much strength it is exerting to do an exact job, then it can compensate for the strength and the impact that it's taking. Now whether I may be doing a punch in my Yang Lu Chuan form, which does that. I may be doing the punch which does that, or I may be hitting my Makawara like that. My body is getting that instantaneous proprioception signal back into itself. And this is increasing my awareness and telling my body how to move, where to move. It's known as the body's sixth sense when you talk about it in psychological terms. It's known as the body's sixth sense. It's proprioception that allows you to drive, because you know where your gear stick is, how much pressure to exert, how to turn the steering wheel. It's what allows people to type and to talk to somebody else. It's what's allowing people to do this with their phones, basically, because they know how much, unless your screen's broken like mine, with their phones. Although, if you're using your phone, try and do it upright, because 25% of people now have got text neck syndrome from doing this all the time. It's very unnatural with your neck or your phone up. Especially the Japanese. Anyway, I digress again. Next way that your Tai Chi is increasing your proprioception is you're not using focus vision. You're not looking at, if Leigh does stocks versus swings again. So you can see now his gaze was straight out.
I probably couldn't actually, because my whole arm was
sorry.
Yeah, maybe I moved towards the camera so you can say the same thing.
So you can see now he didn't follow his limbs, his gaze was to the horizon, the classics say. So he's taking everything in now in his small focus peripheral vision. So that is increasing the proprioceptive signals from his hands and his feet to tell him where his weight is, where his feet are, where his hands are. You know, if I put a drawing pin under there and his foot went onto the drawing pin, well, he'd have retracted his foot, and because he's so used to doing his Tai Chi, he probably wouldn't have looked. He'd probably gone, oh, pull his foot away and then looked. Oh, what did I put my foot down? You know, that's a drawing. You horrible man. So he was taking everything in his small focus peripheral vision. Excuse me, now I'm not here to teach you mindfulness or modern ideas of meditation, but that's basically where they go in now. You've got three different types of vision. You've got focus vision, which we use to read. You've got peripheral vision, which is the rest of the space that you can see in your vision. And then you've got small focus peripheral vision, which is what we use in the martial arts, or was termed by the Chinese martial artists as eagle vision, because you're locking onto the space that something took up. If you see what I mean. Now, I'm locking onto the space around Eli now. If Eli goes to move, then I can intercept his movement because I can see where he came from, not necessarily where he's going to. And this is your small focus peripheral vision or your eagle vision. But this is causing more proprioceptive signal from the body and from the mind to allow the body to compensate. Because you see, as soon as he moved, then my body went to compensate from his movement, from years of using peripheral vision in the martial arena. But this now, the latest research into ataxia or an ataxic in Parkinson's, or a lack of spatial awareness from Parkinson's disease, also in brain injuries and also in dementia and the such like. They're doing a lot of work now on proprioceptive signals from the whole body and from the peripheral vision to keep certain parts of the brain active, to stop these parts of the brain shutting down, because as we get older in our lives, you know, we tend to decrease in what we're doing in life, especially in the West, you know, in the East and in Africa especially, you know, in Africa, you know, if you can't go and hunt, then you can go and die. So if you can't hunt and gather, then you're not using it much. You've got to keep on going, you've got to keep on going all the way through your life. But in the West, we tend to be, oh no, you've got to stay indoors and sit in that chair and read your book and wear your cap and smoke your pipe and not do anything when you get old. Ridiculous, you know, absolutely ridiculous principle, you know. As I said, I've trained people in their 70s and in their 80s that can flog me, you know, they really living a good quality of life, and this tends to be a very Western idea that older people, no, older people are terrible, you know. No, wonderful, wonderful, wealth of knowledge, great experience, a wonderful way, you know, they've developed everything that we know. So they've done everything that we've done up to this point now. We've got to go forward. So your elder martial artist, even if they can't stand up properly anymore for whatever reason, they've got wonderful lessons to teach us. So again, the last part of proprioceptive training in the West are one-legged postures and closing your eyes whilst doing them. Now they're saying take your eyes, open your eyes, but take them out of focus whilst doing proprioceptive training. I know they do a lot of proprioceptive training with sticks in the West, especially for people with brain injuries, where they'll get them to stand on one leg and then put one hand up in the air and shut their eyes. And you can see, you know, I start to wobble straight away, but I'm using the stick as a center now. So if I stand on one leg, hold my arm up in the air and look straight forwards and just use my peripheral vision, because of the extra proprioceptive signals, I can stabilize. Then I shut my eyes and I instantly have to compensate a lot more and use the proprioceptive signals from my joints and from the weight of this stick that I'm holding on to actually find my equilibrium. So that, now they're saying, will keep our brains active later in life, but it strengthens the body, because the body's always compensating when there's proprioceptive signals. So hence, as I said earlier, if you're wearing false cushioned soles, you're allowing whoever made your shoes to decide the shape of your hips, your knees, your pelvis, and your ankles. And also you're cutting down on that compensatory mechanism of proprioception. So if I don't know, if we were one of those bubble people that's allergic to the 20th century, you know, they would have as much proprioception, they wouldn't be able to be as strong, as mobile as we are in our lives. So, you know, proprioception is one of the greatest gifts of Tai Chi, and modern knowledge is coming around now to see how it's affecting every part of our everyday life. And as I said, psychologists consider it to be our sixth sense. The benefits of moving slowly. Although in the West we consider exercise, away, and that is irreplaceable. You must do some sort of cardiovascular work, you must do some sort of repetitive loading and unloading of the body, some sort of gentle impactive work to increase your cardiovascular fitness, to increase your overall body strength, to increase your bone density and structure, to aid your functional mobility. But the benefits of moving slowly shouldn't be ignored. Swimmers, we're told swim slowly. You know, in what we're doing, swim as slow as we can. And to the point where we're actually losing the ability to stay afloat sometimes. Because it's something that swimmers have always done, is swim slowly with great technique. Moving slowly stimulates your parasympathetic relaxation response. So it decreases pain. It increases your awareness of your actual body. which modern psychologists are calling body sense. Also mindfulness as well comes into mindfulness. For some reason I really don't like that buzzword mindfulness. It's real quality, you know, what the research that's coming into mindfulness at the moment is real quality work. But it's one of those things I don't like. Oh yeah, it's just me being weird. So yeah, it's stimulating your parasympathetic relaxation response, so it's giving you greater awareness to certain parts of your body, it's decreasing your pain levels. There's a lot of work being done in palliative care, in pain reduction, the ideas of throw the pill pot away, which will never really happen. We've got to use all knowledge together to reduce pain when it comes to, you know, people who are suffering chronic or acute pain. But there's a lot of work that's being done now with moving the body slowly, especially in stepping. Because stepping is something that's very, very natural for us to do, so they slow down our stepping. Actually, I had a back injury, and I saw a chiropractor a couple of weeks back. I actually sneezed on the plane from coming home seeing this guy, and I couldn't walk properly the next day, you know, because I had my back broken about 7 or 8 years ago, and you know, sometimes it just goes, no, you're not doing this for a couple of days, you've got to move slowly. So you look, when we are ill, we move slowly. When we are in pain, we move slowly. It doesn't matter the illness. You know, we could have a lymphatic problem. We move slowly. There's a response to moving slowly in the body, an ancient response. It may be that we just are in so much pain we can't move properly, hence my back injury. But I saw this chiropractor, and he didn't know much about me, and he saw to me to give me a wonderful treatment. And then he said to me, move slowly, pretend you're doing Tai Chi. I was like, oh, do you mind if I don't pretend and just do Tai Chi? He was, oh, brilliant, you know, absolutely brilliant. So there's a lot of modern research, you know, chiropractors are doing a lot of good work with pain, and osteopaths. There's a lot of modern research into what slow movement does to the body. So as I said, it increases your body awareness, your body sense. It stimulates your parasympathetic relaxation response. You slow down your breathing. It reduces your stress response. So stress causes pain. Okay? If we don't breathe effectively, we're not oxygenating the body, we get more pain. We get anxiety. Your anxiety levels will raise. This causes all sorts of terrible things, you know, like cancer comes from stress. Stress has been proved to be nearly as carcinogenic as smoking. So breathing slowly is very, very important, just to fully oxygenate the body. Reduction in stress also promotes your immune response and reduces your inflammation response as well. And oxygenation of any inflamed area will allow your body to heal that area better. We get anything up to 50% more strength from moving slowly. So like calisthenics, as I mentioned earlier, Tai Chi is a great calisthenic exercise. Calisthenics is stimulating the small muscle groups to respond. So again, if you don't mind doing the end movement of single whip. So here Eli's using the smaller hip flexors, the smaller abdominal, all of the smaller muscles in the body have come into play now to get him to be able to do this very alternative type of movement. It's a very alternative movement. There's no point in nature if you do a movement like that, really. Or I don't know, holding a banana in a tree, pushing off the attacking monkey, whatever, you know, it's not very plausible that you're going to do that movement. So that movement is stimulating all of these smaller muscle groups in the body. And as I said in the first volume, with the structural connectivity links your body together, increases your strength. There's some research which is showing now, which I got from Psychology Today, and somewhere else. What else did I get? Anyway, I digress again. But anything up to 50% more strength of the body by stimulating the smaller muscle groups. That's why calisthenics just took off when calisthenics were first realised. Well, they were first grouped. We've always done calisthenic exercise as long as we've been exercising. We've done calisthenics, but they were first given a name by the person who invented the systems of calisthenic exercise. But basically, you're just stimulating, twitching, and releasing these smaller muscle groups of the body, so they link the body together better, and that can give you a 50% better strength output. And input as well, which a lot of people don't realise with strength. Breathing deeply also, and reduction of the stress, takes our heart rate down. This increases our levels of dopamine, so we tend to feel better, and very, very importantly, will increase our libido. And that's what we're about at the end of the day, you know. That is the majority of what our body is here for. We are here to be able to reproduce, to make the next generation of us. So all the amazing things that we can do, our body is almost solely focused on get oxygen in, get blood to go round and round, feed the machine so it can procreate. That's what we're designed to do. Other than it's very nice. You know, it's the debate, what came first, the chicken or the egg? It's genetics. The chicken is just the egg's way of making another better egg. So we're just nature's way of making another better us. So be the best you can be. Be as healthy as you can be, and develop yourself and be the best that you can be. Thank you very much, Ina.
Thank you, Leigh.
And thanks for watching. I hope you got something from that.